So why don't we get started? Thank you all for attending today. My name is Scott Todaro. I'm the co-founder and CMO of Plannuh. Today we're going to walk through an operational marketing plan. Now, you may have never heard this term before, and that's because you probably built a plan, but really haven't figured out how best to put it into action. And it's difficult because a lot of these plans get built in PowerPoint decks or in spreadsheets, and these are static tools. They're tough to collaborate with your team members. They're tough to keep the goals and the strategies you set out front and center in front of your team so that they can do the right thing. And as a result, a lot of the plans end up going south, get lost in translation as people get into tactical mode and start to try to hit what their primary targets are, usually for lead generation. So today we're going to go into a little more depth. And what I want you to take away from this more than anything else, okay, is that you have an obligation as marketers to really contribute to the strategic elements of your company. Marketing is a very strategic position. The problem is that if you come up with that strategy and you can't execute it, or you can't refine it, then you're going to end up getting yourself in a lot of trouble. And this is not where marketers want to be. So we want to be able to control our destiny. We want to be able to see the results of the work that we do. And we want to be able to adapt. Okay, so that's what the operational marketing plan is going to do. So who am I? I told you what I do here at Plannuh, but for the most part, I've spent almost my entire life, adult life, in marketing, starting at 18, getting an undergraduate degree in business with a concentration in marketing and getting my MBA, straight through to 29 years of work experience, 7 times as the head of marketing, and 4 of the companies that I worked for had successful exits as large as $2.8 billion. I've taught marketing at the University of Massachusetts for 4 years to graduate students, and I'm also the co-author of the book, The Next CMO, which you see on the right-hand side here, which is available for all the attendees here today for free. If you go to plannuh.com, on the top banner, you'll see the book available, and Kelsey will add a link into the chat window here that you guys can click on and get the book for free. Okay, so let's start out with what is an operational marketing plan and why do you need it? Okay, here's the problem, guys. The problem is that today we build plans. Some of us build plans. I will say that I've worked with well over 300 marketing organizations out there. Not everybody builds plans. They may have some goals. They're loosely tied with metrics that they're looking to hit on the lead gen side, but really coming up with a detailed strategic approach, and then figuring out how you're going to build a plan to help execute those goals and strategies you have, and also to be able to see how it materializes into your day-to-day activities, okay? The problem is today is if you're building these documents, you're building out these documents with all of this great strategy, all this detailed thought that you put into it that's going to either change your brand or supercharge your lead generation or take you into a new market. All of these elements that you really put a lot of time and energy into it, it's like, well, where do I operationalize this? How do I make this work for me? And how does my team understand the strategy and put it into tactics? Because too often what ends up happening is the team ends up doing what they've always done. And they get into wash, rinse, repeat mode, and they're not really thinking about how are they contributing to the goals that you set, either from a company standpoint or from the marketing standpoint. And this creates a huge gap, okay? And because you don't have the visibility as to what's going on, you can't really course correct if things are going in the wrong direction. You have limited team collaboration. There's no place for everybody to work together to get things done. You have to call a lot of excess meetings. You have no agility when things change. And let's face it, all things change, guys. Every single plan that I have built in my 29-year career has changed at some point or another. Whether it's a pandemic or something else, you will find yourself changing your plan over the course of the year. And because you don't have everything consolidated in one place and people working and operating, you tend to find yourself spending and not tracking that spend and optimizing that spend correctly. So what is an operational marketing plan? Why does it set you free? The operational marketing plan takes your strategic marketing and it bridges the gap between your marketing execution. So how does this manifest itself? Well, how does this work? Well, you're going to build your strategic plan, and we're going to talk about building that plan today in great detail. And you're going to have to figure out, how does that work with a lot of the tactical execution activities you're going to be doing in order to meet the goals, the strategy and direction that's created by the plan. Because the plan is a static document today. You need to figure out how you're going to consolidate all these things into one space so that you can see it and make it front and center. Some of you may figure out how to use some collaboration tools for it. Some of you will leverage marketing. Some of you will put process in place. Some of you will put status reports in place. Some of you do all of them, right? But taking any of those directions can pull all of these pieces together so you have greater visibility. And when you do that, then you're going to have a goals-based marketing plan that every single activity, every campaign, every channel, every tactic that you use rolls up to achieving specific goals that you've laid out at the beginning of the year. You're going to have a campaign framework that everybody's going to work against. So this is fantastic, because now you're going to have the collaboration that you need, where people are contributing to the marketing you're doing, whether it's a product marketing team needing to provide messages and target audience, or whether it's the design team trying to create some great ad copy, ad design, or the copywriters providing copy. All of this stuff can come together in one key location, but you also add in your spend so that you're able to identify it, and you also add in your metrics, right? And so if you can start to consolidate all of these elements, you're going to have better visibility, okay? You want to get to a position of budget mastery, right? So you have to kind of look at the financial side of things, and because you have a big responsibility in marketing, because you got a big budget and you're spending a lot of it. Usually it's one of the largest discretionary spends at a company, and you have a responsibility, almost a fiduciary responsibility, to manage that money correctly. Right now, CMOs are self-reporting that 26% of all their budget is wasted. Well, if you could just improve that 5%, how much better would your marketing be? Right? Because you could apply it to the right types of things. The only way to do that is to fully understand what is working, what's not. And as marketers, we struggle with this because we have different tools that create different metrics. And because of that, we're not tracking at the right level. We may be tracking some marketing at the lead level, some marketing at the opportunity level, some marketing at the sale level, but they're all not coordinated. And there's no consistent way to manage that and make decisions. And when you're not able to make those decisions, that's when you start getting into, I do this because I've always done it. And once you're doing that, then you start the death spiral. So you need to be, if you do get to the point where you are able to see these numbers and make changes, that's when you can get into agile replanning. And that agility starts with how you build out your plan and the approach you take at the beginning, and carries through the rest of your marketing plan, okay? And so you're always wanting to optimize, you're always wanting to look at not only the data that says what was working, what's not, but also look at the team and get in that qualitative information too, to try to figure out what directions you should go in, adjustments you should make, or things that are going well, how do you maximize the impact of them? So when building your plan, first define your approach. And the one thing I will say is that if everybody is locked in and all working together, you're going to find yourself having way better impact. And I know, look, some of the people on the call here today may have massive marketing teams, 35, 40 people, maybe even bigger, 100 people. It's tough to coordinate across all those teams. But if you can lay out clear goals and you create a structure where everybody's accountable and reporting in through it, is amazing what you can accomplish, just by giving a little bit of focus and then managing to those elements. So the first thing you need to really do is define, when you're building your plan, your approach. There are three primary approaches that teams will use. It depends really on the maturity level of your marketing team. If you have an incredibly seasoned marketing team that tends to be smaller in nature, you're probably going to gravitate to the left here, the read and react. Okay, this gives you a lot of flexibility where you can create generalities around the things that you'd like to accomplish as far as goals go, and also the strategies that you want to utilize in order to drive your marketing. And on a regular basis, some people will use Agile as a methodology for it, where you're scrumming every couple of weeks, coming up what you need to do in order to achieve the goals. Like I said, this works with a very seasoned team where there's not a lot of guidance, and a structure of environment where there's a lot of collaboration. Okay. On the right side of the pendulum over here, we have the attack strategy. And this is for teams that are junior or tend to be a little bit larger. Okay, because there's less coordination, there's more hand-holding that needs to go into the process on it. And you want to build out a more structured plan that has more detail to keep people moving. If you do not do this, this is when you have thrash and you have downtime where you're not getting the productivity levels of the people on your team. What typically happens in industries like tech, they'll use time increments, right? Where I don't know what the heck's going to happen with my company in 6 months. So I want to build out a 6-month plan. I want to build out a quarterly plan, and I'm going to course correct by looking at the numbers on a regular time basis. But the plans that I do build out for the half year or for the quarter are detailed. So we know what we're going to be doing in the short term, and we'll do analysis at the end of it to make decisions. Now, people ask me this all the time. Well, if I go with an attack strategy, it seems like a lot of work, and doesn't it make me inflexible? The reality is no, because you can actually do scenario planning. And what that gives you is the opportunity to either build out best or worst case, or bring other scenarios into factor. Does this product come out on time? You know, can we execute this service? Are we going to go into this market? And if we don't go into this market, we don't get this service down, well, then this is the plan. This is how we're going to reshuffle the deck as far as where the spend goes and the campaigns we're going to run. And you can think through these elements at the beginning of the year. This will help safeguard you so you can be able to quickly transition into the plan that's going to deliver on the goals that you have with the reality that is in front of you. Okay, so an attack strategy, you still can have multiple avenues that you can pursue when changes happen. Now, you're never going to know what every single change is, right? It's not reasonable to know that, you know, a pandemic is coming, right? But, you know, at the end of the day, there are usually some indicators that are important, like a product launch or something along those lines, that may or may not impact the plan, and you need to be ready to move. Now, these are all the reasons why you need to be agile. I'm not going to run through all of them, but I'm sure you've used these as excuses as to why you failed some point during your career. So if you're looking for excuses, here they all are. Okay, I think I've used almost all of them. Now I don't like to use excuses anymore. I like to actually achieve things. And so as a result, you need to start thinking beyond what your baseline plan is and start to take key factors into your planning process. And this is going to be a lot of detailed analysis before you even start. And this is the problem I think sometimes that marketers fall into, is they need to do planning, and then all of a sudden their time frame for planning pops up. They've got 2 weeks to put together a plan to pitch it to the executive team, and they whip some stuff together. Planning starts well in advance, and it starts with data, it starts with your customer, it starts with your trends and your market. And if you pull all those things together, then you'll be in much better shape. So let's talk about the 20 steps. And you're like, oh my God, is there really 20 steps to building a marketing plan? What I say to you is, don't be weak. Do it all. I'm telling you right now, it'll set you free. Okay. And if you put the time and energy into it, trust me, everything else will get easier for you. If you find that you're stressed out and you're trying to get lead generation, everything else, like sometimes it's not the work that you're doing day in and day out. Sometimes it's the planning. You're not thinking through the target audience. You're not thinking through the messages correctly. You're not applying the right strategies. You're not doing a campaign framework, right? You're starting with a bottoms-up approach that's channel-based. That's the problem usually. It's not what you're doing day in and day out, but you work harder and harder trying to make those numbers because you're getting beat up. And you got to take a step back and say, let me look at this from the air instead of the ground, right? And that's what we're going to try to do in this plan, this operational marketing plan, to set you up for success. So I spoiled the surprise on this a little bit, but you've got to know your market. In your title is the word market, okay? And you need to know it better than anyone. And that's not just what's the competition doing and what are the market trends. You need to know that, but you also need to know what are the trends with customers or potential customers, those prospects. What are the trends in those areas? This is where you start, because you are the eyes and ears for your company out there. And I know there are a lot of people on the B2B side that will tell me, well, the salespeople are the eyes and ears. They shouldn't be, because if you ask any salesperson what their view of the world is, it's going to be what deals they're working on today. And they may not be your ideal customer profile. They may not be the needs that are common. And unless you're able to aggregate those, you're not going to get the right answers. Well, guess what? You're the aggregators, okay? You're supposed to be looking at this on from a broad spectrum and pulling that information in. And you can do it through surveys. You can do it through focus groups. There are all kinds of tools out there like Gong and Chorus. We can look at lots of sales calls. You can look at trend analysis. You're on the B2C side, you can work with retailers to try to pull in, data from the stores, or look at your e-commerce trends. There's lots of things that you can do to understand the market. The second thing you need to do is look at your situation, okay? And this, the word SWOT has been used over and over again for your situation analysis, right? The reality is it still works. It will help position in your mind what you can take advantage of that are your strengths, and where you're going to either need to hide your weaknesses or reinforce your weaknesses to make sure that you're overcoming them. And then always making sure, what has potential threats. This will help you with your agility. If you're able to identify the threats, then you can start to plan for them. If you can't identify them, they're going to sneak up on you and they're going to bite you, okay? And the opportunities, this is also part of agility. As these things pop up, maybe, hey, look, I'm doing a Gartner or Forrester evaluation right now. What if we get rated number one? Well, that's a huge opportunity for you, right? To now use that as part of your marketing strategy. Okay, so I always tell marketers, you need to start with your company goals. And, it's interesting, this is not common. It's kind of shocking to me, but it's actually not common that any marketer would start with the company goals. And it's interesting, as I've brought this up with marketers over the years, they say things like, well, we don't have company goals other than a sales goal. And I say, well, why don't you help them shape the company goals? Why are you waiting for the CEO to tell you what to do? Why don't you go to the CEO and say, hey, look, I think we could move into this market. Or, hey, this is a new industry that I think we could start to target. Or, hey, we should open up another channel by using partners. You have every right to do that. Those are all under your purview. And also on top of it, you can push perception and all kinds of wonderful goals. But if they are already established, then make sure that you're figuring out how to accomplish them. And I'll tell you right now, it is very common that if not 60%, 100% of the goals that are set by the company are achievable through marketing, okay? So to set realistic goals, you need to take in certain things into account. The first thing you need to take into account is all the historical data, right? So what have you done before in the past? If you don't look at the past, you're destined to repeat the sins of the past, right? You want to look at your team. Do you have the right people with the right skill set? Do not set a plan that your team cannot achieve because you don't have the right people or they're just not seasoned enough to handle it. Do you have enough budget? And this is the key thing on this. You hear me say this over and over again, is do not let the finance team give you the budget. I would bet that 80 to 90% of the people on the call wait for the finance team to give you a budget and then try to back solve it into a plan. You're going to fail. You need to create your plan and tell the finance team, this is what I need in order to hit it, right? And then you need to add, another 20% to it because they're going to cut 20% out of it. So that you end up with the budget that you need in order to hit your goals. Because otherwise you're setting yourself up for failure, okay? Competition, got to know what they're doing. Where are they going? Where are they investing? Got to get some intel, okay? Because this always can take you down, okay? Market conditions. Right now there's a recession coming. Are you guys planning for it? Are you going to the executive team and they say we're going to grow 50% next year? And you're like, oh, yeah, good. I'm going to do it. You own the market. Hey, look, I just want to let you know, I'm looking at these financial indicators out there. It doesn't say that the market's going to be good. Maybe we should be pulling these numbers back. Maybe we should be cutting back. Okay. Sales function. Do you have the right sales function? You can come up with like, we're going to create all these leads. It's fantastic. Are people there to catch them and use them and execute against them? I've worked at companies where I literally created so many leads that literally over 50% of them were not followed up on. Why are we spending more money, right? We could dial this back and not spend as much money and save that and put it towards profit or another part of the business, okay? Or your product or service. And I mentioned, examples of them coming out on time. Okay, so, we're all going to need a little therapy when we get these unrealistic goals, and we get them all the time, okay? And here are the reasons why. And you need to be able to identify this so you do not get caught in the trap. The first one is the data gap, all right? You're like literally setting goals with no understanding of whether you can hit them. Now, I understand if some of you guys are working at startups, there is no historical data really to go off of. And some of you probably have taken new jobs where the prior CMO or even the director of marketing or ops person, well, they didn't really track stuff or didn't track it well. But you need to try to figure out some trend analysis. Otherwise, you're really just kind of guessing, okay? The second thing is executive pressure. You need to be strong. I know it's tough. There are a lot of CEOs out there that are just unbearable, right? And they want things that are unrealistic. And I think what you need to do is show the logic of how you get to the answers. Or you turn around and say, I cannot do it for this amount of money. I cannot do it with these people. If you give me these people in this time frame with this money, I can do it. Now, it's not only just pressure from the executive team, it can actually be pressure that comes from yourself. If you have the CMO or director of marketing and you get hero complex thinking that, oh, I can do this, I can make this happen. Can you? I mean, you got to be honest with yourself. Marketing is really hard to do well. It is. It's really hard. So you need to make sure that you're set up for success. You can't pull the whole marketing organization along with you, no matter how good you are. Okay. Is there resource imbalance? Okay. Do you have enough people? Right. We talked about that. There's no strategic alignment. This happens all the time. We throw goals out there and we have no idea how we're going to execute them. We figure it out on the fly. Now, this may happen. I mean, not everything is going to be 100% figured out when we roll it out, but having some clear direction on it is huge, is a huge component of this. And you need to make sure that your team is bought in and the executive team's bought in, because otherwise you're going to find yourself having to do a lot of extra legwork in order to overcome or retrain. And you're going to usually find out that the buy-in isn't for like 2, 3, 4 weeks until your plan, and now already you're backpedaling. Okay. So if you look at some of the, the common company objectives, marketing has a key role in supporting all of them. I mentioned this. Obviously, anything that's growth related, marketing is going to have to support. Whether you're going into a new market, new industry, you just want to grow sales in general, marketing is going to have to support that in one way, shape, or form. They even be on the B2C side, you're leading it, right? You're responsible for driving that. Okay. But even things like perception, right? Being number one in a category, that's usually a company related goal that marketing has to support fully, right? Or even attracting top talent. Well, do you think people want to go to a company they've never heard of, or they haven't heard good things about, or they don't see their brand all over the place? You got a huge responsibility to that. Okay. So as you're thinking about what you own and how you support this, remember the old 4 Ps of marketing. For those of you that are old enough to remember this getting hammered into your head in business school, they still stand today. I would argue there's a 5th P, and that's the people. Those are the audiences you're working with, whether it's partners, customers, prospects. You need to understand these things, and you're going to have a role in supporting all of them. Now, the Operational Marketing Index, which is an index that all of you guys can take, it's basically a survey with 16 questions. And what it does is it measures your operational effectiveness for your plan and your budget, how you set up your goals, whether you're tracking ROI, those types of things. One of the revealing things from the survey is that less than 40% of marketers are setting goals based on company objectives. You heard me say this before, that less than 50%, most people aren't. Let that sink in for a second. My question to you is, what are you doing? If they're not set off of the company goals, you're not helping achieve and push, and you have an incredibly strategic role in doing that. So if you put your time and energy into understanding the goals and figuring out what your role is in helping accomplish it, at the end of the year, you can say, this is what we set for the goals, and this is how we helped it. And then who's going to argue that? You cannot argue that point. So I kind of spoiled this. Look, you get it. Company goals align with marketing goals. All right. It's straightforward. You could keep throwing out company goals, and I could find a way for marketing to support it. Okay. So don't shy away from it unless you feel like you don't have the team to execute or support the goal. But if you do, jump in. Because at the end of the day, you're going to make your company great. And if your company's great, you'll be great. It's really that simple. Business is the ultimate team sport, and marketing is one of the biggest team sports that going as far as the inside the organization. All right. So this is the way I want you to start thinking about structuring your plan when you're building it. Okay, because we talked about, starting with your company goals, but they're going to be checkpoints, and everything works with the point above it, right? So we have our company goals. You're going to build your company goals you're going to build your marketing goals off of the company goals. Okay. You're going to set marketing strategies to accomplish your marketing goals. What is a marketing strategy? It is an approach to accomplishing a goal. It's also the connective tissue between your goals and your campaigns. Okay. A lot of times you'll name a campaign a strategy. You won't even know that you're doing it. Okay. And as a result of that, you're going to have synergies and an approach for building out your campaigns, which is your execution. Now, the last piece we have are the marketing channels. And a lot of marketing organizations are set up by channel. Why? Because there are people on the team that know which buttons to press on doing digital marketing or other things along those lines. And I'm telling you right now, if you are starting to allocate all your budget by channel, I'm telling you right now, you're going to run into trouble because you're not thinking about this properly. You're too focused on the bottom. It's more important to understand who the buyer is, what you want to message to that buyer to accomplish a specific goal. If you can identify that first, then actually the channel becomes very easy to select and manipulate. But if you start with the channel, who's it going to? What are you trying to accomplish? What is the message? Now you're back solving everything with the channel. You need to start top down in your plan, not bottoms up. And I see far too many plans out there that are really basically a budget. We've allocated certain amounts of money to different channels, hoping that they're going to get to the result. You haven't thought through any of the issues, problems. You haven't looked at any of the data, and you're not aligning with the company. And you need to do that. Because if you don't, you're going to fail. And there are far too many marketers out there that have. CMO's average lifespan is 1 year, 9 months. That's not a great track record. And the reason being is a lot of them go into companies, they get bullied because they don't have enough lead generation, and they start at the channels trying to jam the pot because they know how to do that, and they have people on the team that know how to execute it. Challenge your team to think in a goals-based approach. When somebody says they want to do something, the first question is, what goal is this achieving? The second question is, who are we targeting and what messages are we going to use? And if somebody can't answer that, then say, go back to the drawing board and come back to me. Stop coming to me with channels like we're going to do a dinner series in Toledo. Okay? All right. There's another look at this just to help structure your team to think along the lines of the goals here. I call it the goals pyramid. You can call it whatever you want, but it kind of just aligns everybody in the organization and assigns them metrics for achieving the goals. And everybody has their piece of the pie. So whether it's starting with that top line company goal and going to the qualitative marketing goals, to the metrics of achievement, and then assigning and divvying those metrics out to the individuals or teams, then them selecting the strategies and then running the campaigns. This is another way to look at it if that's better for you. Now, if this is starting to feel maddening, okay, if it's starting to feel unwieldy, like, well, how do I set all these goals and how many goals do I need to set and all the other things? I'm going to tell you right now, there are only 3 goals that marketing is responsible for. And I spent a lot of time, I wrote about this in the book. I spent a long time trying to figure out how many goals there are. And if you look on the right-hand side, there's a bunch of goals there, right? And I started writing those first. And that's like infinite. Like I could keep writing, I was good like at 80, 90. But the funny thing is that after I started looking at each one of these goals, they neatly fit into 3 categories. They fit into sales, awareness, and perception. And so if you start with those 3 primary goals, and even your company goals are really going to align with these 3 goals. If you start with these 3, then you're going to be on the right path. Even if you don't have a set of goals that are set by the executive team and you just don't have the chops to get the executive team to agree on the goals, if you focus on these key areas, you will at least be putting your company on the right trajectory. If you are, obviously you identify what those goals are correctly. Okay, but they're going to fall in these 3 primary goals types. All right. So once we've set our goals, now we got to figure out, well, how are we going to get there? And that's what marketing strategies are. And, you know, marketing strategy is an incredibly overused word. There's no such thing as a marketing strategy. You can be strategic and you can run a bunch of strategies, but there's no one marketing strategy, right? There are lots of them. Over on the right-hand side, you can see this is a smattering of them. I did research on this again. It was well over 50 strategies. It started to become maddening how many there are out there. But that's the good news, is that you can use lots of different approaches to achieve your goals, and it will set up all of your campaign strategy, which is a better approach. We'll talk about that in 1 second. Okay. But this is just funny. I love this because, you know, I always try to get information from whatever sources I can. And so I was actually wrestling with the word marketing strategy, and I had been using it my whole career, like a marketing strategy, really strategic. And and then all of a sudden I said, you know, what does it mean? It's like, yeah, I've been doing this for years. And so I went to Wikipedia and they gave me this definition, which I don't agree with. It's a long-term game plan, sustainable competitive advantage. It's like a big word soup. But here's the great thing is if you look at the next line on strategy, is that scholars are still debating the precise meaning of marketing strategy. They're still debating it. And the reason why they're debating it is because there is no one strategy. There are lots of strategies, right? And that's the thing, is that you can still be strategic, and that thought process and the planning process is strategic, but there's not just one strategy. And you will not implement one strategy because you're going to run multiple campaigns, you have multiple goals, and you may have multiple strategies in order to achieve those goals. Okay, so once we've identified our strategy, it gets a lot easier for us to identify which campaigns we're going to build. Now, anybody that's out there building campaigns, I want you to be thinking about these 4 key elements to your campaigns. You have goals, you have a target audience, you may have a theme, you may be doing thematic campaigns, you have key messages. You're going to use multiple channels. Anybody doing a campaign with just one channel? I'm doing email. Email is not a channel. It's not, email is not a campaign. It is a channel. Okay. And so you want to use multiple channels to get a certain message out to a specific audience, and you want to be able to make sure that it's measurable so you can improve. Okay. Chapter in the book on has a template here for manage your campaigns. These are campaign types. Okay, this is not a campaign type. Okay, and if you don't believe me, okay, the campaign's been around a long time. It's actually comes from war, just like everything else in marketing. It always starts with war somehow, or competition in some way, shape, or form. But it manifested itself from war to presidential campaigns. President McKinley was the first one to use it in 1898, or whatever it was when he ran. The long and short of it is that every campaign you run is basically just like a presidential campaign, right? You have a goal is to become president of the United States. You have a strategy is going to reach out to the battleground states, just like you'd be reaching out to your target audience. who in this case happens to be the American people. You have a theme that goes along with it. You have your central messages, that is your platform that you need to communicate with people. And let's face it, that communication, those communication channels you have are the voice to get your message out to the American people in these battleground states in order to become president, which is your goal. And then you have your final message, your measurement of success. Did I get the votes or not? And we tally them up. Doesn't this sound like every single marketing campaign you've ever run? If it doesn't, it should, because this is the way your marketing campaign should look. And if you're not thinking in terms of goals and strategies and target audiences and messages, you got to go back to the drawing board. Channels are not where it's at. You need to use the channels, and that's where the cost is, but it is the last thing you need to look at. Okay, when you're doing your campaigns, make sure you're looking at things like timeline, team management, because there are going to be lots of people that are contributing to campaigns. They shouldn't be just one person sitting in a shed somewhere cranking out emails. Okay, and you need to look at all the activities and assign tasks to people to make sure that they're on schedule to get this stuff done. It's really important. Your content team. Okay, you got to make sure you're allocating budget and managing it correctly, so you're not overspending on the campaigns. So there's a lot of things that go into campaign management. Now, people will say, "Well, I don't understand what's the difference between a campaign and a channel, Scott? I mean, you told me email's not a campaign, but I go to HubSpot and I send out an email and it says email campaign. And I'm telling you right now that all the tech vendors screwed this up for the rest of us. Okay, and they basically called any activity that you do a campaign. It's the most overused word in marketing, right? It's not a campaign. I just explained what it was. Here's what a channel is over on the right. And if you want to know the difference between the two, okay, so if somebody has a need out there, they're thirsty, the campaign is the water. It's got the message to say, I got water here. Well, I need to get that message out to somebody. That's the channel. It's a pipe. But what's more important, the pipe or the water? The water is, because that's solving the problem. The pipe is a mechanism for me to get the water to you, just like if I was communicating to you. Think in these terms. The channels are incredibly important, right? And selecting channels is important too, because there's going to be certain channels that are going to work exceptionally well for certain audiences and not great for other ones. Okay, so you need to understand your audience and where they are on the other side of it, right? You're not going to do mobile marketing to people that are over 80 years old. Okay, so they don't know how to use the phone, right? So you need to understand where your audience is and select your channels accordingly, but in context of the campaign, so that you understand what you're going to say and who you're going to see, who you're going to talk to, and then select the channel. Okay, so I kind of spoiled the surprise on this, but like I said, you're not going to do, things to certain audience if people don't go to trade shows or people don't do certain things that are online or offline. Make sure that people are on the other end. Otherwise, you're going to waste a lot of time and energy. Obviously, I always tell people that do Facebook for B2B, don't. Why are you doing it? It's a consumer tool. When I'm on Facebook, I'm not thinking about work. LinkedIn is a better tool for business, right? Conversely, don't be using LinkedIn for anything you do in B2C. So you got to understand these audiences, make sure you're using the proper channels for it. Now, I talked about target audience. I want you to spend time thinking about it. You're like, oh, Scott, we did our personas. That's wonderful. But target audience isn't a snapshot in time. And a lot of times when I work with companies, I'll say, oh, show me your personas. And they show them to me. And they were made 2.5 years earlier. Say, have you changed any of your products? Yes. Have you gone into new regions? Yes. Has your sales exploded? Yes. Well, does that change the dynamic? Do you know more about your audience now than you did before? Are you able to get beyond geographics and demographics and behavioral? Can you get to psychographics because you've been working so closely with them? It's absolutely critical that you understand that. Second thing is positioning and messaging. This is kind of a lost art. Not a lot of people do it. If you haven't written a positioning statement, when you go to build out your plan, back it up like 4 or 5 months and write a positioning statement. There are 5 key elements to the positioning statement: your target audience, the pain the target audience is having, how you describe your product or service, the benefits it offers, and the differentiation. And if you can narrow down these 5 elements, you have your entire messaging platform synthesized in a couple of sentences. What that does now, it gives you the opportunity to blow that back out into a messaging guide for all the different audiences you're going after, long descriptions, short descriptions, and it can help your team move faster. It will also help shape a lot of your campaigns as we start to identify target audience and the messages that are associated with it. The hard work you put into building this now can cause, when you start to do execution, you can move a lot faster. And this helps with this operationalizing your plan, where things now are cut and paste because you did all the hard work at one central point in time, thinking deeply through what your customers want or the other audiences, partners, etc. Branding, lots of marketers still own branding today. There's lots of things that you can do to build a brand. One of the things I will say is that we get caught up as marketers a lot of times on the colors and the logo. I don't know if a logo really sells anything. I mean, obviously you can have a bad logo and people don't like it. And you'll say, oh, well, Nike's, but that logo sells lots of stuff, and it does. But the actual building of that logo was done by an intern for $500. So don't get caught up on how much money you're going to spend in creating the perfect shape to your logo. Spend more time about what the tone is and what that means and what you want people to understand about your brand and the feelings that they have towards your brand. And that takes an extra level of thinking, and that should all go into your plan. Now, there are the three P's of the 4 P's. I mentioned this earlier that for some reason, I don't know why marketing teams have lost them. A lot of times I'll talk to marketing teams and they really only own promotion, right? And so as a result of that, you're kind of in a weakened position to do your job well, because now other people in the organization are responsible for giving this stuff to you, and they may not care as much. Okay, so when we're talking about product or services, marketing has a huge role in help shaping this. Whether it's improving the product or building it from scratch, you should have your eyeballs on the potential buyers and understand what their needs are. Bring that back to shaping and building out the product. If you are not involved in your product team, you're like, oh, what they do is, I don't know what they do. Well, whatever they do, and you don't really know the product, I'm telling you, you're failing. How do you market something you don't understand? You need to take the time to learn it. And on top of it, you need to take the time to think about how the customers use it. And if you can't do that, you need to talk to the customers and find out what they need. And you need to bring that back to the organization. You're going to bring back all kinds of information from other things like analysts or reviews. All of that information is available to you as marketers looking at the marketing and market, and can bring it back into the organization to improve. Same thing with pricing. Pricing has been lost to the product management team. It's been lost to the sales team on the B2B side. On B2C, you guys still have it. But on the B2B side, we've lost it, right? You need to get it back. And if you can't get the whole thing back, you need to get involved in it. And you need to start providing examples of why the pricing needs to change, or what other pricing models there are, or what your competition is doing for pricing. This will help shape all of this. Start to understand things around profitability. This will help you even when you're marketing. We'll talk more about business value and things along those lines. The other thing that marketing owns on the B2C side, the B2B is lost, is the sales channels, right? We have a head of sales now that decides which sales channels you're going after. You should have your hand in it, because how can you go into any channels if you can't open up the dialogue? Marketing has responsibility for doing that. Marketing has responsibility for pushing these relationships and expanding them so that not only are they selling your product, but they're marketing your brand too. So you need to start thinking through these key elements. So what do you need to support your plan? Okay. Well, the first thing is you need to start working through your timeline. And as I said, you can break this up into different time increments. You can break it into all kinds of things, right? But you need to put together a detailed timeline. There are some things you're going to need to do for the year. You've got trade shows you signed up for the year before that go into your plan. You got product launches that are coming up. There are all these things that you need to prepare for, and start to put them into your timeline to make sure that you can execute effectively. Okay. Make sure that your org chart is set up for success. Just because somebody wants to do a specific job doesn't mean they're qualified to do it. Now, you may want to give somebody the opportunity to grow, but understand that they are not going to be a superstar day one. And as a result, whatever projects you're giving to them, you need to understand that they may not come out very great. And as a result of that, you may not hit some of the goals that you've set out. So you need to figure out what is that timeline where certain people are going to reach, maximum productivity. If you're hiring new employees that need to get up to speed on the product, et cetera, what is that actual timeline to productivity? And just because you fill a role doesn't mean that that's being done immediately. There's more of a timeline. And what happens when you don't fill a role and it goes 4, 5, 6 months? This is why you need to get into scenario planning if you can't find the right person. I was talking to somebody recently, it took them 12 months to hire an ops person. They had all these goals for the year. They didn't get any of them done because they couldn't get the ops person in to actually do any of them. So you got to understand that. Your tech stack is maddening. There's over 8,000 different marketing technologies out there that you can use to do your job, right? There's a lot, right? And you need to make sure that you're spending money on what's going to make the biggest impact. We can spend money on lots of little things, but it adds up really quickly. Your budget. Here's what I want to say about your budget. Okay, you need to manage it closely, and marketers can't stand managing budgets, right? But the reality is that usually we set ourselves up for failure right off the bat. We get a budget from finance, and we don't allocate at least 55 to 75% of that budget to achieving the goals. If you're allocating less than 50% of your budget to achieving your goals, once again, I got to ask, where is it going? Is it going to your tech stack? Is it going to experimental marketing? Do you just not know what to do with it? Well, I can pretty much guarantee that you're going to blow it. If you understand and apply it towards the goals to achieve them, you're going to get the maximum ROI. Right now, the index that I talked about before reveals that only 26% of marketers allocate 60% or more of their budget to support the goals. Only 26%. Okay? Not good. We're wondering why we're not hitting our goals. We're wondering why we don't have any goals at all, right? The second thing is the index reveals that 38% of marketers do not identify and reallocate unused budget throughout the year. Why? You know why? Because you're doing it in a spreadsheet, and the spreadsheet doesn't raise its hand and say, hey, you canceled that campaign. You had $20,000 in it. Move it forward. So you need to put together a process for identifying. This is part of operationalizing your marketing, so you understand when numbers aren't being, when your dollar amounts are not being used. All right, testing and measurement. Look, there are lots of ways you can test. You should always leave some budget for tests. You should always try new marketing. It makes the job fun. The people on your team will have greater affinity for the work that they're doing, but also you may find some really creative ways to reach people. So make sure that you're allocating budget and you're putting, good, solid new ideas for reaching audiences, or putting different content elements in place, or different strategies, or trying new channels. And make sure that everything you're doing, you're measuring. And when I say measurement, I'm not talking about measurement just for impressions or contacts or leads. You all do that today. There are lots of tools that have it. The problem that you have is there's not an apples to apples comparison. Some people will tell you how many website visits. I mean, some of your tracking vehicles will tell you how many people attended, your website, or visited your website. Some will get you leads. Some of them will get you right to an opportunity. Well, how do I compare which one of these were most effective? Well, there's one way to do that, and that's to track it by profit and business value in terms of dollars or whatever currency you're using. Okay, being able to track it that way, tracking return on investment. These can be done. They are being done today, and you need to do it, because here's the thing is, if you can track on ROI and business value, that profit, you're going to have a great conversation with your CFO. If I say I got 3x ROI on this campaign I ran, guess what the CFO is going to do? He's going to write you another check. He's going to say, do more of that. It's not ambiguous. If you tell them you created 5,000 leads, I don't know, is that good or not? I don't know. But you're telling me that you got dollars back, or you're basically calculating and giving an ROI or above what I gave you to spend. Well, now you're in the driver's seat, right? Oh, you want me to run in? Well, okay, there goes 3x. Oh, well, maybe we should do it again. But you can't report this right now. So this is why you're not in the driver's seat. It makes it tough to work with the other executives. Measure at 3 levels. Okay, you want to measure at the channel level, which you're doing today. I'm sure all of your metrics are coming in, but then roll those channel metrics up to your campaigns. You're going to be using multiple channels. Why would I do that? Well, some channels are going to cost you a fortune. Other channels aren't going to cost you a dime. And if you only want to look at the channels that cost you money, then the return on investment is always going to be terrible compared to your free channels. But if you roll all of those up into a campaign, it smooths out your spend, and you can justify the expensive channels you're using with some inexpensive channels. And on top of it now, because all of that's rolling up to a goal, a target audience, and a message, you can determine whether your message to that target audience worked in order to achieve the goal, because it's rolling up to the campaign level instead of just telling you how many leads that you created through the channel. You're getting to a more detailed level of understanding. And then on top of it, all this can roll up to your marketing plan. So you can see, how did I perform? My goals, did I achieve them? And it rolls up from all your campaigns that are supporting that particular goal. Think about this structure when you're setting up your hierarchy for understanding what's going on with your marketing. Now, lastly, I'll point out here is that you need to have your assumptions for your budget, and this will help set up your scenario planning. Do you have enough budget? Do you have the team readiness? We talked about all these things, but you should list out these assumptions and make sure that everybody understands it, that your plan is based on a set of assumptions. And if things are going to go like, I can't give you the budget, I can't give you the head count, well, those assumptions are now wrong. They need to be adjusted. Your plan needs to be adjusted. But if you build your plan first, you can advocate to get those things before those cuts or decisions are made. Once those decisions are made, it is very hard to unravel them. Okay. All right. So we have some free tools to help you out. We check your email today. You'll be getting Operational Marketing Plans ebook this hot off the presses. As of today, you should be getting it. Secondly, we have the Marketing Plan Builder that's up on our website that walks you through a lot of the steps that I just walked you through today. If you hit a button, it'll actually create your PowerPoint deck that you can use to present your plan. And if you just don't want to build it in here, you can just hit the button and get the whole template and fill it out when you're ready to do your planning. As I mentioned, you got the planning book. And so I believe that's in the chat window here for you guys to click on and get it. We also have the next CMO community. So you have questions about planning, join the community. It's free. We've now got, I think it's over 2,200 marketing leaders that are in this, posting ideas, asking questions. It's great. It's an opportunity in a no consequence way to go in and just get information, find out what other people are doing, and just build relationships with other marketing leaders. And even if you want to go in there and vent, you can do that too, because trust me, there are a lot of marketing leaders that are struggling right now. If you want to take the marketing operations index, operational marketing index, I'm sorry, it's available for you. Here's the link. I'm sure we're going to throw it into the chat window so you guys can click on it and go take it and see how you stack up. I will say that the average score is a 44 on a scale of 1 to 100. We got a lot of work to do. Okay, as a profession, there's a lot of work that we can do in order to improve. So I know I went very long. I got 5 minutes left for questions. Throw them either in the Q&A or the chat. I am happy to answer them at this point in time. If I can't get around to all of them, I'll try to answer them offline, but I'll stay on the call as long as you guys can hack me. And then if you have other questions, you can send it to scott@plannuh.com. I'm happy to answer any other questions that you have, or you want to talk to me about anything else. If you'd like to see how you can build and execute your plan in Plannuh, you can go to contact@plannuh.com and you can see how Plannuh can help you with a lot of these things. So at this point in time, I will take any questions. Kelsey, do we have any?
We do actually have one question in the chat so far. The first question is, I'd love to align marketing goals and strategy to company goals, but what if your company hasn't established clear corporate goals, hasn't clarified focus across multiple potential sectors, hasn't defined ICP, etc.? Do you need to fix that as a marketer?
Well, first of all, what I will say is if you're the head of marketing or in some sort of director role, you have a responsibility for defining the ICP. So if you're waiting for somebody else like the head of sales to define it, I would argue that you need to get ahead of it and do it yourself. The second thing is around the goals for the company. And trust me, I've lived this with you. I feel your pain where you're sitting there and all of a sudden the clock rolls around to 12:01 on January 1st, and there are no company goals yet. Here's what you can do, okay? You can look at your business and you can take and build your own goals that you think where the company needs to go and pitch them to the executive team. Take the leadership on this. I can guarantee you, if you start leading on this and saying, here's what we're going to accomplish. Well, our first goal is our sales goal. We're going to grow this amount, and this is how marketing is going to support it. And then we're going to be number one in our category, and this is how marketing is going to support it. And this is how we're going to create awareness for these new products that are coming out. We're going into a new market, and this is how marketing is going to support it. Or these are the channels we're going to open up, and this is how marketing is support. No one is going to push back on you. Okay, and then what you're going to do is you're going to force the hand of the rest of the executives to start thinking about these goals. And guess what you're going to be seen as? Strategic. And you're going to start getting invited to a lot of meetings that you weren't invited to prior to this, because they'll start including in all kinds of things like sales modeling. They'll start including you on things like, financial modeling. And if you build your plan and set those goals ahead of schedule, you watch to see the CFO will take them from you and build them into their models. It's amazing. It was liberating for me when I did it the first time. I did it because I was sick and tired of waiting for my marketing budget to come in, trying to build my plan off of it and failing. I said, I have to get ahead of this. I know what the problems are at this business. Let me start doing it. And you can do this too. I didn't do anything special. I just got out ahead of it. So look 6 months in advance, because your finance team is going to start about 5 months out. So do it 6 months out. Get some baseline goals set, and then think about how you're going to be able to execute on them using your strategies and some key campaigns. And then start thinking about what you're going to need from a headcount standpoint and a money standpoint. Pitch that to the CFO, get them bought in, and tell them that you're going to be able to calculate things like ROI and business value, profit, and they'll love you. They'll get right behind everything that you need to do, and you'll get the money that you need. And it worked for me. And by the way, they're going to cut up to 20%, sometimes 10, sometimes 20. So make sure whatever you need, just add another 10, 20% to it. So when they cut, you get exactly what you need. It's kind of amazing how that works. So that's the tip that I learned about 10 years ago that's worked exceptionally well for me. Next question.
The next question was asking if you do coaching.
CMO coaching. Look, if you become a Plannuh customer, you get me to do CMO coaching. So we have quarterly strategy sessions that I'm happy to work through your plans with you for free. There's no additional cost on it. And, you can talk to me at any time you want. I'm happy to help in any capacity to build out your plan, or, manage your budget, or set up your metrics, or just give you advice on setting up your team. Or frankly, sometimes people just need a vent, and I'm happy to listen to that too, because pretty much I've gone through all of it, and it's pretty miserable. And I understand being a head of marketing is tough. It's tough, but it's included with Plannuh if you go down that route. But I do not do CMO coaching on the side. Sorry. Any other questions?
Next question. How do we get the other teams like sales and executive teams on board to our plan? What can we be a motivation for them? What can be a motivation for them?
Exactly. Well, great. Yeah. So the sales guy, how easy is that? What is it? I've run sales 4 times, and I can honestly tell you, you want to manipulate a head of sales, because I know I've been manipulated, is you just literally tell them how you're going to help them make the number. And if you can show data, now maybe you can't. Now, if you don't have the data, it's a little more difficult. But if you show a well laid out plan, I have not had a bad relationship with a head of sales ever in my career of running marketing. And primarily it's because I understand what their focus is, right? And if you understand what their focus is, and they're going to say leads and everything else, but if you're thinking deeper into the funnel and you're aligning with them from a sales standpoint, as to how you're going to make those numbers. And you show the calculations of how you're going to work back. And I'm happy to show you how to figure out those conversion rates to get there. And then you lay out the plan on how you're going to do it. They're going to buy into it. Now, the rest of the executive team is now, and I know that there are different CEOs out there, some CEOs that are more marketing friendly than others. Some just don't get marketing. They don't even want to take the time to learn it. And all they know is when they shut the marketing off, bad things happen. So they need to keep investing in it. So from your standpoint, what I would do is I would put together, say, look, these were our goals for this past year. Okay, here's where I think we need to go for this year. And as a result of going in this direction for this year, here's where I think, what I think the goal should be. And here's where I can contribute. And if you start thinking about that and you share those with the CEO, they may get a little ornery because the goals didn't come from them. But you know what you're going to do? You're going to get them thinking. And here's what you're going to do. You're going to put pressure on them. Like one of the things that I was kind of an eye opener to me is I had a CEO of 4 companies ago say, Scott, you put a tremendous amount of pressure on me. And at the time, I didn't really understand what he meant, but it's because I was thinking about these things ahead. And this is where a lot of marketers get into trouble, is because they start thinking about their plan and their goals in October. You need to start thinking about next year in June, right? And if you do that, you're going to be way ahead of everyone. And people will be like, whoa, you're jumping the gun. But here's the thing, you're thinking about the business in the future. And here's the question back to them, why aren't you? Why am I doing this? Right? And they're like, oh, you got a good point. Or call a meeting and lead it. Call it and say, hey, look, here's what we had for goals this year. This is where we are against the goals. Do we need to do more next year in order to accomplish these goals for this year because we're going to miss? Or do we blow these numbers out? Do we want to supercharge from what we did? And here are some other avenues that we can do to help supercharge it. But if you know that how you're going already 6 months in the year, you can start to make, you can start to see the trend lines of what's going to happen for next year. Okay. Sorry for that long-winded answer, but that's a lot to unpack. But here's the long and short of it: take control of it, start the conversation, control what you can, push those goals, and then get everybody's buy-in. Any other questions?
Yes. Are there any tips or tools on how to find the best channels to target your core audience?
Yeah, absolutely. So every single channel out there should be able to tell you what their channel reaches, right? I mean, on LinkedIn, you have all the different selects. You go a trade show, they should be able to give you a sample list of the registrants of who's attending. If you're doing consumer related stuff, you should be able to do surveys and focus groups to find out what types of buyers there are out there. There are lots of ways to understand who the buyers are and what they're using. Okay, and that's how you select your channels. Well, too often what we'll do is we'll just say, well, what is a channel that I can use? What is the channel that other companies are using? But if that channel doesn't reach your audience, and if you can't segment down to get to the right people, because there's no one product out there that everybody can use. Okay, it just doesn't exist. Okay, I've tried to come up with it, but people always have biases as to why or why not they would buy it. So you need to find out what that specific audience is, and you need to stick with it. Think about your brand, and is there a channel that actually helps kind of push your brand in the right direction? Right? I mean, if there's something that you don't really buy into as part of a channel, then don't use it. Right? Or if you're not set up to be able to really leverage the channel, I can't tell you how many companies out there use trade shows, but they don't do any legwork to really make the trade show successful. They pop up a booth, they put some candy out in front of it and hope that people show up to go see the thing. Well, if you're not prepared to really take advantage of that channel by all the pre-work leading up to the trade show, you shouldn't use it. And this is part of understanding the staff that you have and their expertise for leveraging the channel as well. Any other questions? Okay. All right, I am way over time. And for those of you that actually hung on the line to this, you get a Purple Heart today. But thanks so much for your time today. And hopefully you want to take a look at Plannuh. We got a solution for you that can help pull all this stuff together and help you focus on the right things as you build out and execute your plan. But thanks so much for taking the time today, and hopefully we'll see you in a future thought leadership webinar session. Thanks again.